this chord progression. It's really weird. So, right smack in the middle of this chord progression, that's in E major, we reach D, no, C, sorry, C, and then D, which neither of which are in E major. So why are they there? Okay, first let's analyze the chords that are here and how they relate to E major. Okay, E. I'm gonna play out like the actual chords instead of the power chords. E major, G sharp minor, C sharp minor, A major. That's the first half of the chord progression. I'd like to turn the G sharp minor into a major because it leads us into C sharp minor better, but it doesn't matter too much. But then we get C and D. Why is that there? Well, I haven't seen this personally. I haven't looked too much for it, but I haven't seen this brought up personally that much myself. But there's a certain thing in chord progressions. Let me give you an example before I explain what's happening. Here's another example from a different song. Did you catch what went on there? We're on the fourth, and to lead the fourth back to the root, we turn it into a major. Into a minor. Major to minor, back to the root, because we're moving in half-step motion, and half-step motion is very powerful. Alright, that's the leading thing right there, right? Well, that's how I want to analyze this. Other people might hear it differently, but this is how I hear it. Instead of thinking that part as individual chords, you see, Kurt only used power chords, so the C and the G right there, which is just the fifth, the C and the fifth. The thing about roots and fifths, is that they are the most consonant interval. They work the best together, so much so that they blend in and kind of work like just one singular powerful note a lot of the time. So like C has a lot of overtones of that fifth there, and that kind of just makes it blend in a lot. With a fifth, you don't get the emotion that a third or even a fourth has. You know, it's just works, right? So much so that it's just kind of like one note. And if we think of it as one note, instead of thinking of the C as a C major chord, we can instead just think of it as the note C, which, you know, that's how power chords are used a lot of the time. Instead of being chords, are used more for melodic structure, you know, as notes themselves. So if we do that, which chord did we last leave off on in this chord progression? A major. So what happens if we add that C to A major, or more, take away the major third and make it a minor third? We have that C, and that is the leading note back to E minor. So if we think of it not as the C major chord, but more as a leading tone back to E, then it makes a lot more sense in this progression. Right? Instead of C, which would come out of nowhere, where did that come from, right? So I think it makes a lot more sense to think of it as A major turning to A minor, which leads us back to E. And, you know, nothing in the, you know, the melody does play the E that that major third that wasn't present in the power chord, but you see that major third is also present in A minor. You know, they didn't do anything really fancy like add a seventh or either of these sevenths, which would have been weird in A minor. They just, you know, just these two notes, which could be in A minor. And then the C, not the C, this D is just, you know, melodic movement, just kind of decoration, just to give it some motion.